Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to discuss the FBI raid that took place at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Now this is a really unprecedented event. Aside from the basic story, which I'm going to begin going over, there's a lot of other interesting details about this entire situation and other connections that I found that I think would be of interest that we're going to take a little deep dive into. So let's go ahead and get right into this. According to the official story that we have so far, the FBI executed a search warrant on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, and this is part of an investigation into the handling of presidential documents, including classified documents that may have been brought there. Now, Trump confirmed this raid. Apparently, his lawyer was there. Trump was not. He was up in New York. In this article, he goes on to say the extraordinary move to search the home of a former president raises the stakes for the Justice Department and comes as Trump's legal problems continue on multiple fronts. Trump is also expected in the coming months to announce he will launch another bid for the White House in 2024. So that of course, leads everyone to speculate, myself included. Is that what this is really about? Were they, planning this ahead of time so that they could, swoop on in and set up a scenario that they could potentially arrest him for? So we don't know what these documents are at this time. The search warrant was sealed. So at this point, we're just wondering, what is it? What was it that he took? Now, what we know so far is that when Trump left the White House in January of 2021, he took with him about 15 boxes worth of records, but he actually returned them. There was a negotiation, a back and forth kind of negotiation about these documents, and he agreed to return some of the materials in January of this year, of 2022. Upon receipt, National Archives officials advised the Justice Department that the returned materials included classified information. And again, we don't know what this is. And what I found interesting in this article, since everyone has been talking about that this seems like a very obvious political ploy, that they're trying to prevent him from running for office in 2024. But this author in the New York Post, he brought up some interesting points. What he says here is that if Trump had not declassified the materials while he was president, then his continuing possession of them in a non-secure location was probably illegal. While presidents have unilateral authority to declassify intelligence, they only maintain that authority while in office. Seems like common sense there. So they wouldn't obviously be able to do that post-presidency. The return documents were thus potentially evidence of crimes. In addition, since it is believed Trump did not return everything that was shipped out of the White House in those hectic days of January 2021, there was significant reason to suspect he continued to retain classified information at Mar-a-Lago. This author mentions how one of the potential law violations would be there's a penalty provision in which a defendant shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office in the United States. So we have a big issue here if this is true, that he did take the classified material. Obviously, then there's speculation that the DOJ may be mobilizing now in order to trigger the Section 2071 for disqualification. But this guy argues that he doubts that because the Justice Department well knows that the qualifications for a presidential candidate are set out in the Constitution. They may not be altered by the statute precisely because the framers did not want the executive branch to be dominated by the legislature, as would happen if Congress could disqualify incumbent or potential presidents simply by passing a law. He goes on to talk about the Constitution also prescribes a basis for disqualifying a person from seeking the presidency or other federal office. So essentially, to trigger disqualification, Congress would have to impeach and convict Trump. It cannot be done by criminal prosecution. So then it gets you thinking, what is this really about? Because, if they raid him and it's turns out to be felonious, that in and of itself would still not bar him from running in 2024. So what they would have to do is obviously arrest him and keep him in jail at least long enough until we get to 2024. Because, after 2024, it's pretty much over. I mean, he's not going to be able to run past 2024. He only has so much time left. And to be honest, I think he's a little getting up there with age to be running in 2024. but he definitely has a lot better mental faculties than the current president does. Now, of course, everyone is wondering, and myself included, what were these documents that he took? And was it possible that the materials that he is keeping at his residence at Mar-a-Lago could be damning information on key deep state players? The only thing that we have at this point, this just came out today, that the boxes contain documents and mementos from Trump's presidency, reportedly including letters from Barack Obama and Kim Jong-un and other correspondence with world leaders. Now, of course, we know the FBI was not raiding Mar-a-Lago to look for some stupid letter that Barack Obama had sent Trump. That's just really laughable. But, what were these documents? It's either that they went to retrieve information that they had already planted, that would be incriminating for Trump, or they're concerned about what information he's holding on to. It is weird that they searched Melania's wardrobe, so that makes you wonder, it was small enough to be something in her wardrobe, possibly. Was it a thumb drive? So we don't know. I'm really just curious what this is about. I'm sure everyone else as well. Now, they said that the FBI, the feds were on the property for 9 hours. All the staff and the Secret Service were required to stay outside in the 91-degree heat for all these hours. And they said that the agents were very rude and arrogant. And so they spent 9 hours is a really long time. What exactly were they looking for? And it does make you wonder, was it something small enough that they had to search every single inch? And when they got to that safe, it was empty. There's nothing in there. Now, while my first thought was that they were looking for documents that were damning on other people that Trump has, one thing that has me wondering, and there's a really interesting aspect to Trump's life, is Trump's uncle, John Trump. If you don't know much about him, not many people do know this or talk about this, at least. But John Trump, he was a brilliant man. He was an inventor and a physicist. He was a professor at MIT. The most interesting and fascinating aspect to this man was that he was the one who oversaw Nikola Tesla's papers after he died. This is major. This is really major, and it's such a huge detail that hardly anyone ever talks about. So then it has you wondering, is it possible that the documents that Donald Trump, John Trump's nephew, that he took might have something to do with these Tesla's papers? Now, the FBI had been monitoring Tesla for a little while before he died. And of course, a lot of people, myself included, wonder about his death. That seems suspicious. Did he really just die, in his apartment alone, the way that they said? And what information did he have that they really wanted to get from him? So, it really has you wondering now that Trump is currently raided for documents that he took. Does that have anything to do with these Tesla files that Trump's uncle had overseen and had assessed? Now, if you want to know more about this Tesla-Trump connection here, Dark Journalist has a YouTube channel, and he's done fantastic reporting on this, more in depth than anyone. And I believe he's one of the first to even really get into the Trump-Tesla connection. In fact, I think the History Channel took his information that he had put on his channel. So he does some excellent reporting on this. He also just did a fantastic live stream last night going over the Mar-a-Lago Trump raid. And if you want to get even deeper into the conspiracy theory world about what could possibly be going on with these raided documents, he had speculated that this might have something to do with what is known as the UFO file. Now, that's a whole other thing I don't have time to get into, but do check out his show. I'll link it in the description. There's a really fascinating story within this about Nixon's assistant Merritt. Merritt had worked for Nixon for some time and was told about this UFO file that was kept hidden in the White House, and much, much more. It's unbelievably fascinating. And so if you want to hear more about this, I will provide a link in the description of this video. Okay, now one of the glaring details that has been revealed about this raid, I've seen a lot of people talk about this, you probably already know about this judge. The judge who signed off on FBI's Trump raid at Mar-a-Lago had donated $2,000 to Obama's campaign. He was also installed by Obama in 2018. And he represented Epstein's Lolita Express pilots, his private assistant, and his Yugoslavian sex slave. So that's quite a choice of judge that they got there to sign off on this warrant. And then we got this nice little picture here. His name is Bruce Reinhardt. And so he was the one who gave Jeffrey Epstein a sweetheart deal and then went to work for Epstein. It's pretty interesting that this is the guy who had given the okay on this warrant. Now, we of course know that Mar-a-Lago was a place where Jeffrey Epstein had a membership to. He was a member there at this club up until 2007, and he was permanently expelled from this club because he apparently had harassed the daughter of a member of Mar-a-Lago. And so apparently, as the story goes, he harassed this young girl. She was an underage girl, of course, as no one's surprised there. And Trump found out, and then he permanently banned him from ever returning to Mar-a-Lago. I think there's way, way, way more to this story. And, you know, there's been a lot of different rumors, whispers, and speculation about what this all means, because shortly after Epstein was arrested, he was also arrested that year, and there have been rumors that Trump was one of the only people who actually was willing to give damning evidence on Epstein. And as we know, that Epstein and Trump were friends for years. We don't know how close, but we have several pictures of them, you know, partying together and laughing together, and we got Ghislaine there. So there's no question that there was some type of relationship. We just don't know, you know, exactly how close. And it is interesting that I haven't found a single picture of the two since he had been banned from Mar-a-Lago. So, you know, I don't go so far as what some of the QAnon people think about him, you know, Trump's involvement with Epstein being like an undercover spy. I mean, I can see why they think that. I don't know if that's so much as true, but it is interesting, the timing. And there was also another interview a couple years later, I think it was around 2010. It's really hard to find this interview where Trump was asked about Epstein. And he had said on record that he knew Epstein was a really gross man and that gross things went on at this infamous Epstein Island. I can't remember who he was referencing. I'm going off memory here, but he had said, you should ask so-and-so about this island because they sure know about all the gross stuff that goes on at this island. Now, here's another interesting thing about Mar-a-Lago, and I don't know if you guys remember this, that back in 2020, there was a Chinese woman who had intruded Mar-a-Lago, and she ended up being sentenced to 6 months for trespassing. And it was a really odd story. I remember it at the time, and I thought it was weird. I didn't know what to make of it. I just remember there was some Chinese woman who tried to get in, and apparently she had actually hired a tour guide, and she was on the property legally. Like, she was doing everything legitimately. She was taking pictures, but I guess she left and then she came back, and that's when she was arrested for trespassing. And it was just an odd story. You know, it could have been innocuous in and of itself. But now what we know about this raid, it does kind of make you wonder what this was really about. And they had even said in this article that the incident raised fears that she could have posed as an intelligence threat. But U.S. experts told Reuters it was hard to believe that she was a professional spy. Now, I don't know if she was some type of spy on behalf of China per se. I don't know if that's really the case, but what was she really doing there, you know? And I'm starting to wonder about the guests that he had at this resort over the years, or this woman, or other situations where there could have been an instance where damning info, they could have planted information that they would then use in the raid to incriminate Trump. So you just kind of have to wonder about this one. What was this really about? It was interesting that she's 33. That, of course, is a number I always keep an eye on. But this was just a weird one. Also, I was just kind of perusing the Wikipedia page, and I had never heard this either. Just last year in 2021, there was a story that was published where this guy, this journalist, quote unquote journalist, he published an article on ways to sneak into Mar-a-Lago. So why was he putting out this, what was this really about? Was this a way for them to try to get people to sneak in there, and then, this would give them a reason to, plant evidence? They would just blame it on this article that, oh, these people were sneaking in, and because they read it in this article. It's just a really strange thing. It's really odd. Now, the other odd thing was that the same day of this raid, Axios had put out this story with these pictures that I just kind of laughed. I saw this after the raid. They put out these pictures saying that, so Maggie Haberman, she works for the New York Times, she gave them these photos to publish about how there's the story, and it came out, like a year ago, that Trump had taken documents and he tried to flush them down the toilet. It's so ridiculous. It's like, flush them down the toilet. It's just, to me, this sounded like, at the time, I thought it was just such a ridiculous story. And they claim that there was a White House staff periodically found wads of paper clogged in a toilet. And they had said that this was Trump. Why would he? This just seems so ridiculous to me. I mean, but it's just weird that this story came out the same day of the raid. Okay, now we're going to get into some weird stuff here. And before you are turned off by this part where we get into astrology and whatnot, and I understand that this is not for everyone to care about, they might roll their eyes about, and I fully understand that. But there are some significance to the date of August 8th, and the date being a very significant day in astrology. So I've said this before, and I'll repeat myself, that it doesn't matter how ridiculous you think it is. You may just, laugh at astrology or numerology. That's irrelevant. I'm not even that much into it myself, to be honest. I don't even really connect with my sign. I don't even care to read my horoscope. I'm not one of those. So I'm not coming from that angle. But so regardless of what, our own perception of astrology and numerology, that's irrelevant because it is important to them. So they do, in a lot of these major events, false flag events, you'll notice that they will embed these sort of occult signatures into these events. And they will line up, when they plan out something that they want to do, something significant, they do look for important astrological dates. Now, the date of August 8th is very important astrologically. It's actually the date of the Lion's Gate portal. Now, the Lion's Gate portal, according to astrologers, this date between July 28th and August 12th is when this portal supposedly opens up for manifestation. But its powers are believed to be at its peak on August 8th. So it is really interesting that this date, of all dates when they do the raid, that they chose the date of the Lion's Gate portal. Now, there's also another really interesting thing about the Lion's Gate. The Lion's Gate is also the name of a physical location in Jerusalem. And according to traditional Christian observance, this location, the Lion's Gate, is the last walk of Jesus from prison to crucifixion. The Via Dolorosa, which that's Italian for the painful way, and it begins at the Lion's Gate. So how interesting is that this location has this really important significance? And, it just had me thinking, because with astrology, we have the Lion's Gate, where they believe that's a big date, a high energy date where you can manifest things that you want to bring into life. And that this is also in Christianity, this location of in Jerusalem is the last walk of Jesus from prison to crucifixion. And so, it leads you to wonder that if they chose this date deliberately, are they trying to manifest the prevention of Trump returning to office in 2024? Is that the ritual that we're seeing take place here? And now, of course, Trump is nowhere near a Jesus figure, whether you believe Jesus was real or not, but most people know at least what he represents and the person that he was. And I would never, ever compare Trump to Jesus at all. But that's irrelevant. To me, Trump is more of what I kind of see, because I'm not that much obsessed with politics as far as taking sides. And to me, Trump is more symbolic of the old America. And, we can go into whether or not why Trump was even allowed to be president to begin with. I have my own theories on that. But to me, it's more about the symbolic person that he is rather than who he truly was as being. He could have been, to some people, he's the worst president that ever existed. There's people who think he's worse than Hitler. There's people who think the literal opposite, that he's the best president we've ever had, maybe aside from like JFK or Lincoln, but at least in their lifetime. So there's definitely a dichotomy as far as what people think of him. But again, to me, he's more symbolic of old America. And the way that I see things is that, the powers that be that do want to dismantle America and everything that it stood for when it was great at some point, that this is all this kind of ritual that it is taking place is using Trump to symbolize the old America when there was something good that America represented. And they're kind of using him as the ritual of the dismantling of America and pushing us more towards the Great Reset. So that's what I found really interesting about the Lion's Gate, how it happened to be the last walk of Jesus from prison to crucifixion. Of course, he hasn't been arrested yet, but that seems to be the next step that they're going for here. I wonder if he doesn't get thrown in jail, is this also going to be, they're either going to throw this man in jail or they're going to try to assassinate him. Now, here's another really interesting thing about the numbers, the numerology here about the date. Now, this is the number to text Trump for his upcoming rally in Georgia is 88022. Now, isn't that interesting? Because 8/8/2022 is the date of this raid. So here we have more indication that this was definitely a pre-planned event. Another important event that took place on August 8th, it was in 1974. That's the same date where President Richard Nixon had announced his resignation. So he resigned on the same date, on August 8th, the same date of Donald Trump's raid back in 1974. Now, the timing is also really interesting when we look at the Alex Jones trial that just ended. We just wrapped up that trial on Friday, where he was ordered to pay over $50 million, which of course he won't be paying all of that because of the punitive damages cap that they have in Texas, but still it's a set of precedent. And now it's interesting because Roger Stone had pointed out that this is before the raid, but they're trying to connect I don't know if you watched any of the trial. I watched a lot of the Alex Jones trial. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was so crazy, whether you like this guy or not. I've never seen a more biased judge, and it truly was the epitome of a kangaroo court. So what they're doing now, though, towards the end of the trial, the plaintiff's lawyer, one of the main plaintiff's lawyer, had Alex on the stand and gave him this big aha gotcha moment, where he's like, did you know that your lawyer accidentally sent us your entire phone? And it was completely just off the cuff. Basically, they were trying to say that Alex had lied, and it was really ended up being nothing. But now what they're doing is they're trying to say that the phone that they got with the Alex's lawyer had accidentally, that's a whole other thing I think is really weird. Now it turns out that it was actually the paralegal for that lawyer's team that accidentally sent that over. I still find that weird. Like that accident should never have happened. But what they're trying to do is use that and say, they put out all these articles even before the raid that this showed that Alex Jones and Roger Stone were part of orchestrating January 6th, which was just ridiculous. And here, Roger Stone, this is a gab from a couple days ago, but he's like, there are no text messages between me and Alex that pertain to, in any way, to January 6th. And this article came out where they're saying that they're basically trying to connect the entire J6 thing to Alex, to Roger Stone, to Trump, that they all were orchestrating that. And I think they want to throw them all in jail. And they're working on Trump. We know Roger, he already got his sentence commuted by Trump, or he was pardoned. He initially wanted his sentence commuted because he was going to fight it. He decided that it was going to be too expensive to fight it. So then he finally said, just pardon me, which Trump did. Now, this I read the other day from the Associated Press. This just was really aggravating to read, because after the jury awarded the families, they say $50 million. It's not going to be that much, but there's now this is the narrative they're going with now. So they're like, oh, he's ordered to pay all these millions, but Holocaust deniers, vaccine skeptics, and they're like, can air lies without fear of legal trouble. So this is what this is ultimately about. This isn't about Alex Jones. This is about everyone who doesn't want to go along with the mainstream narrative, that has questions about the jab. I'm not a Holocaust denier, and that really bothers me, that we're just lumped in with the QAnon people. And, you're a flat earther, you're a QAnon, you're a Holocaust denier, all of this crap. If you don't go along with the mainstream, if you're not a lefty at this point, you're basically a Holocaust denier to them. That's how they're going to try to paint everyone who doesn't go with the flow of things. And so that's really what we're looking at here. This is really huge here, because the timing of this Alex Jones trial just wrapping up, and then right away they went into raiding Trump. They're really going full force, and things are moving very rapidly. And all of this is going towards trying to control the midterm elections, but even more importantly, the next presidential election.